Hello and good morning and good afternoon and a good evening to you, the good people of the tube. Hope you're all today, hope you're feeling grand and all is well in your world. That intro jam has got me in a very chilled mood. Very chilled mood actually, which is very rare for me. Especially in videos, I normally get dead hyper. So I'm very, very relaxed after that intro. It was a very long one, so I do apologise for that as well if it was a bit too long and everyone got a little bit bored. Okay, so anyway, welcome to another Q&A Wednesday, everybody. Yes, question one today. Nice and chilled today. Zen, very zen. Okay, so, question one. How do you get John Frusciante's tone from Slane Castle? Do you have any tips on how to get it while still using the DS2 and WH10? It's the same way you get John's tone full stop. John's tone never really changed. The only difference was that around Slane Castle by the way era, John's tone was a little cleaner. I don't know if it was to do with the way they were biasing his amps, or the way he was running his amps, or what it was. But his guitar tone around the Slane Castle era was a lot cleaner. But it's the exact same way. To get it to work with the DS2 and the Ibanez WH10, you still need it to be overdriven. You know, you still need to be overdriving. And although John's tone seems really clean, it's not clean. There's always that element of breakup in his tone. Even if you can't hear it, it's there. And that's one of those things, I mean, especially on old Marshalls, like, you know, his Plexi, for instance, his Major. Those old Marshalls, when they're really wound up, still sound really clean. They have a lot of definition. You can kind of hear it in the Marshall Governor pedal. If I just play like a G chord, you know, you can hear that's distorted, but it's still got a clean element in the fact you can hear every note. And the same thing goes when you got the jackhammer, which I'm using to simulate that compression. So it reigns in the WH10 and the DS2. You know, that's still quite... Let's go to single coil. So... You know, that sounds clean, but it's not... I mean, it'll still reign in the DS2. I won't get any jump. You know, I could do that all day. The DS2 and the Ibanez WH10 are not going to do that. So, it's the same way you would get John's tone any other way. The only difference is it's just a little less gain than the Californication era on the amps. The amps are still working really hard and still compressing and overdriving, but it has a little bit more sparkle, clarity, if you will. His tone at Slane Castle and around that by the way area, it has a little bit more kind of clarity to it. It's the same as I've spoke about in the John Frusciante series and in multiple videos before. The same way you get John's tone throughout his entire Californication, by the way, Stadium Arcadium era, is by basically overdriving your amplifier, you know, one way or another, that you need that compression either from a pedal or your amp to rein in those pedals so they work. Otherwise, you know, you get that horrific volume jump. Horrific volume jump we all know and hate. So yeah, it's no different really. It's no different. Just like, you know, just dial back again a bit. You know, just a smidge. Not a lot. The thing about John's tone, and I was thinking about this the other day, and this is one of the more interesting kind of elements of John's tone, is although John's tone sounds really clean, it isn't. And it's like, and I always kind of like think about Angus Young. I remember people telling me and reading an interview with Angus Young. Angus Young said, when somebody said, you know, you use a heavily distorted sound, Angus Young said, no, I don't. I use a clean tone. And we all know Angus Young's tone isn't clean. It's natural breakup of super leads and super basses. But to him, because it's really, really clear and clean sounding, it's a clean tone. It's not a distorted tone. So, and the same principle goes for John Frusciante's tone and Jimi Hendrix's clean tone and Peter Green's clean tone. They're not really clean. They have an element of drive about them, overdrive, which then lends to the compression element, which then lends to reining in pedals so they don't go you know. So the way you get John Frusciante's tone for the Slane Castle gigs is the same way you get his tone throughout his entire, like I say, Californication, but by the way, Stadium Arcadium era. There's no difference there. It's the same principle of overdriving an overdriven amp, adding that natural kind of overdrive that comes from distortion, or overdrive, if that makes any sense. There was a lot of random uses of the word overdrive then. But, well, not random, but they're in place, but they might have been a bit weird. But I hope that makes sense. But it's simple. It's just the same principle. It's exactly the same principle. It's compression caused by overdrive that is the core of John's tone that then makes the DS2 and the Ibanez WH behave themselves. Like I say, that sounds really clean. It is really, if you think about it, it sounds really clean because it is really clean. But it's got enough compression from the jackhammer. I can also get it out the CR120's dirty channel if I wanted. But it's got enough compression and enough gain on it where, like I say, I can kick on the DS2 and it's not going to jump. It's going to make it behave. So it behaves itself. Same with the Ibanez WH. The only difference with the Ibanez WH is you're not getting a volume jump, you're just getting the immense gain because especially with humbuckers. You're not getting a volume jump, you're just getting that gain jump, which is what you want from the Ibanez WH. You're not getting the horrific volume thing, you're just getting the gain, which is that stereotypical John WH sound. Okay, so, I hope that's answered your question. It's not really an answer, I do apologise for that, but it is, like I said, it's exactly the same principle as you'd get his tone any other place. It's just a case of having that, either using your amp's distortion channel, overdrive channel or distortion channel, whatever, or an overdrive pedal. In my case, I'm using the jackhammer to do it. And basically just kind of finding that kind of sweet spot, so to say, where the DS2 and the Ibanez WH will respond in that really, really nice way. I mean, in all fairness, you always want your distortion pedals to jump out more than your clean tone anyway. I mean, you don't want that horrific jump that, I know we've all had at some point with the DS2 and the Ibanez WH. Definitely where it's kind of like, you go to engage it and it's just like, tears your face off and you're just left like going, help me, like that. But you just got to find a sweet spot on your amp, and it takes a long time to find it. It's not a case of just trying to find it. It can literally be kind of like millimeters on the gain dial, where you're just literally tapping it either on a pedal or on the amp. I mean, I've got the gain. I can't see. I've got the gain on the jackhammer at 10 o'clock, well, or thereabouts. It's like, I don't know, it's between 10 and 11 o'clock, but if that was the spot where I found that sweet spot, 10 o'clock didn't quite have enough bite, and 11 o'clock was too much bite, so it was a case of finding that little sweet spot. And like I say, it normally is millimeters on the gain dial. You can't just kind of turn it. Normally, you can't just turn it to 1, 2, 3, or 4 for it to kind of be exact, because every amp's different, everybody's guitars are different, everybody's leads are different. So you've really got to mess around. I mean, for instance, when I set the CR120 up for a John tone, I normally have the gain somewhere between 3 and 4. If I'm feeling a bit kind of like Hyde Parky, I have it on 4. But if I feel a bit more, or Californication area, it's kind of 4, but-ish. But I will tend to kind of mess around. It's somewhere between 3 and 4 is the sweet spot on the on my CR120 for that John tone. It's somewhere in there. The MGs, the sweet spot for John tone is somewhere between 2 and 3. No, sorry, between 2 and 4. It's somewhere in there. And you've just got to find it. It's just a case of tweaking, messing around with your pedal until it finally goes, that's it. And you just have to keep going back to your DS2 and the Ibanez WH if you've got that to balance it basically. So yeah, but again, there's no real big secret. It's just like I say, it's that natural overdrive compression that he gets from his amps. more than anything. In my opinion, anyway. I know there's conflicting things out there where people saying, it's this is Boss C1 and it's this pedal, it's the MXR micro amp, it's this that, and the other. That's cool, but in my experience and through studying John's tone for 16 years and finding out what I found out, the way it works for me to get kind of John's tone is to use an overdrive pedal or the dirty channel of the amp, and it just tends to rein in that kind of volume jump. So I hope that's answered your question. I mean, it's not the best answer, and I do apologise for that, but I have covered how to get John's tone quite a lot in previous videos and in the series of John, and it's exactly the same principle. You need that compression that comes from overdrive more than anything. Like, compression pedals will get you a certain amount of the way, but I personally feel to get closer to that kind of real broken up cleanish tone that John's got, you need an overdrive, either from the amp or from a pedal, personally. But but be that for what it will, at the end of the day. At the end of the day, we all need to find our own way to find it. What works for one person won't work for another, and vice versa, and whatever there. So I hope that's answered your question. Like I say, same principle, natural compression caused by overdrive. That's what that is. So I hope that's answered your question. We'll move on to question 2 now. Question 2. Why do you think Jimi Hendrix didn't just buy and play left-handed guitars? Simple. He liked the controls on the top. There was quite a few interviews that I've read with Jimi, and also people who knew Jimi, of why didn't he just have a left-handed guitar, just left-handed Strat. I mean, they were rare, but they were made. They weren't the easiest guitars to get hold of, left-handed Stratocasters and whatnot. But he said, and a lot of people said, he liked the controls on top, and he always had a guitar like that. I mean, he just preferred them to be here instead of down there. It was just a personal preference thing at the end of the day. It was just, he liked where they were, and he liked the way they, responded. Apparently, he also liked, the fact that the tremolo arm was on top. And if you've ever played an upside-down Stratocaster with the tremolo arm this side of the strings instead of this side of the strings, it does feel different. It feels spongier. You've got a lot more kind of scope and a lot more ease of use with the tremolo arm being up here, which is very weird. You wouldn't think it'd make any difference whatsoever, but it does for some reason. So when the tremolo arm's above the strings, when it's on like the low E string side instead of a high E string side, you do get more of a spongier kind of tremolo feel. It's really nice, actually. I would recommend, if you get a chance to try an upside down tremolo, go for it. It's really, really nice. It's really, really pleasant. I've contemplated doing it to a couple of my guitars, but I just haven't got the nerve to do it. So I haven't. I'm too scared of ruining my guitar. So I'll just leave it to my Jimi Strat. If I want that feel, I'll just go to my Jimi Strat. But yeah, it's simple though. Coming back to why didn't he just play left-handed guitars? He does like the controls on top. He said he found them easier to get to and easier to manipulate with the selector switch and the volume and the tones up here. And Jimi developed his own style that way. You can see how he plays with his arm round the controls. So it just became second nature thing for him. It much in the same way as like a lot of us, it's second nature to like coming. Speaking from my own experience for a sec, I don't want to kind of sound like I'm talking for myself, but I don't like it when like on a Les Paul when the volume control's all the way down there, because I like to be able to do that really easy. So I like it when the volume control's really close to the pickups and the bridge, so I can do that. When I don't have it, I don't like it, and that's a preference for me. And much in the same way that Jimi liked his controls on top, much in the same way people do like the Les Paul layouts, much in the same way people like whatever. You know what I mean? It's all personal preference at the end of the day. But I remember watching an interview with Eric Clapton, and it's a very, well, it's not quite a sad interview. It's an extremely sad interview. And seeing as Jimi actually passed away yesterday, in 1970, yes, it was this date, 1970, Jimi passed away. There's a really somber interview with Eric Clapton where he talks about Eric was in a guitar shop and he saw a left-handed Stratocaster, and he bought it knowing he was seeing Jimi Hendrix at a Sly Stone gig in London the next night. So he bought it for him, this left-handed Stratocaster, and Eric said he took it to the gig, and Eric said he saw him at the gig. But there is a lot of weird conflicting stories that Jimmy didn't actually make it because he was supposed to be getting up and jamming with Sly Stone. And there's lots of conflicting stories saying Jimmy didn't actually make it to the gig. So, but, you know, if Eric Clapton said he saw him there, you know, who's to call Eric Clapton a liar? Who's to call these other people a liar? Who knows? You know, if we weren't there, we can't say. But Eric said he saw it. He was sat on one side of the concert hall and Jimmy was over the other side, and heard a wave, and he had that guitar. Eric said he had that guitar with him, and he didn't get to see Jimmy that night. I think he said something like, you know, Jimmy left early, or he just didn't get a chance to speak to him. And the next day, obviously, it came out that Jimmy had died, and Eric said he was left with his Stratocaster, and he just said it just broke his heart. This guitar, he never got to give him it, and you know, it's just horrible. That is just horrific. So we miss you, Jimmy, wherever you are. We miss you, and yeah, it's a funny thing. Anyway, tangent boyed off there, haven't I? But yeah, like I say, it was personal preference to Jimmy. He liked his controls on the top. He just liked where they were, and it's an acquired taste. But you know, like I say in a lot of videos, we're all human beings and we're all individual, and because of that, we all like different things. Which is why I don't like it when people get on YouTube, trolls of YouTube, get on YouTube and they start kind of like belittling people for liking something that they don't like. It's like, you know, that's not for you to say. It's not fair to say that person's wrong for liking that when, you know, because just because you like something else, it's not right, and it's not on, it's not fair. So anyway, yeah, long answer to a simple question there. I do apologise, but you know, what would these videos be without Tangent Boy making an appearance, everybody? So yeah, so simply you like the controls on the top. So you've also asked. I've wondered this as well. It's a John Frusciante question. It's like, why do you think John Frusciante adjusted his Strat for Stadium Arcadium? I think it was because some of the Stadium Arcadium things were a little bit more fiddly than what John had done in the past. I mean, if you look at Californication era and then By the Way era, there's a lot of kind of very kind of simple kind of guitar lines, but very effective. You know what I mean? Like, if that makes any sense. But like, you know, if you take like, I mean, in By the Way, you know, there's a lot of kind of single note stuff, and you know, in Californication, you got like other side. You know, there's a lot of simpleness, and you kind of get away with your guitar being really low and, you know, relaxed doing those kind of riffs because they're not overly involved. But when you get to Stadium Arcadium and you have, you know, riffs like that, you know, it starts to be a bit, when your guitar's down there, it starts to be a bit of a wrist breaker, so you have to winch your guitar up. So I personally think he did it just for comfortableness and, you know, just for comfort, you know, and I don't really think there might be any other reason other than that. Like, say, songs like Snow and certain other things John was doing at that time required the guitar to be higher, because when the guitar's really, really low, it can limit you to what you can and cannot do. His guitar actually came up, the Californication era, John's guitar is super low. Super, super low. I mean, it's down below his waist. By the Way era, it comes up a little bit. It's a bit higher, actually, in By the Way, because of songs like, you know, I Could Die For You, where you got chords like that. You know, you have to have the guitar higher. There's no way you can do that kind of chord with the guitar, you know, around your knees. So, and then obviously Stadium Arcadium, it got higher again because of, I reckon, like, simply because of riffs like Snow and stuff like that. And also certain other techniques that John was doing. He was laying into guitar solos a lot more during the Stadium Arcadium era than he ever had before. There was a lot more kind of craziness about his guitar playing around that period. So I think it was just, he winched the guitar up because it was just more comfortable to do what he wanted to do with a guitar that high. So, but again, who knows? He could have done it just because that, but you know, having a guitar that low was causing him arm trouble, back trouble. He did actually say he did start to have back issues on the Stadium. Well, end of By the Way era, the By the Way tour, the end of By the Way tour, and beginning of Stadium Arcadium, he had actually he started to get a bit of a bad back issues. But you know, who's say it could have been something to do with that? Because if you watch the Off the Map DVD when his guitar's really low, especially when he's kind of like sideways on, if he's facing Chad, he's like that. You know, he's got a real hunch to his back, and because he's right over his guitar doing kind of like, you know, stuff like that. You know, doing that kind of funk stuff. He really leans over his guitar. So, because he had to stop stretching before gigs because he got a really bad back from doing stretching. It really kind of did him in. I think, like, you know, lugging guitars around all night on stage for an hour and a half, 2 hours, or however long they played, you know, it's gonna wear you back out eventually. So I think it was just ease of use, but we'll never know 100% why he did winch his strap up, but he did definitely do it. And I remember the first time I saw him play on the Stadium Arcadium tour was actually on the Jonathan Ross show. They played Dallas, California, and Give It Away live at the end of this chat show. And I noticed his guitar was high then. His strat was higher then. And then I saw him on a Top of the Pops special doing like songs from Stadium Arcadium outside like the BBC Centre in London. And I noticed his guitar was higher then as well. And I was like, oh, he's winched his guitar up. And then he started playing Snow, and I was like, that makes sense. So, but again, I don't know. We'll never know for 100%. It's one of those kind of like little cryptic things. We'll never know 100% why. But yeah, so I hope that's answered your question. I'm going to move on to question 3 now, everybody. Okay, great. Question 3. I'm about to buy a Ibanez WH10 V2 wah because it sounds fantastic. But I am worried about the tone suck of this pedal. I am considering buying a true bypass modded WH10. Do you think this is a mistake? And would the settings you use be the same with a true bypass? No, the settings that I use with my Ibanez wah would be totally different if it was true bypass, because I have it set up to not be. So if it was true, if my Ibanez wah was true bypass, I reckon it would sound a lot different. I would have to retweak everything for it to work. Yeah, I've covered this before, but I wanted to talk about it again, and I'm going to actually do a revisit review on the Ibanez wah, because the first review I didn't understand it, but now I do. So the Ibanez wah V2, you don't have to go out and get a true bypass mod done to it or a volume mod done to it to make it behave. Like I say, mine behaves itself. I haven't done anything to mine. Mine's stock. The only thing that's happened to mine is the battery clip fell off, and I have to run it off the 9-volt plug at the front. But that didn't do anything. But yeah, other than that, it's totally stock. But I say, it's not a mod. It just fell off. It broke off. Anyway, other than that, it's totally stock. But yeah, I mean, I don't get any volume jump. The only thing I get is the gain jump, which, like I say, I spoke about earlier on, which is exactly what you want. But the key to the Ibanez wah is, other than, you know, the true bypass and the volume thing, which I don't feel is necessary at all, is it wants to see a distorted signal. Yeah, one sec. For instance... Okay, so, for instance, if I go to the clean channel of the CL120 really quick and just set it up as neutral as I can. Bit less treble on that. Okay, so, at this point in time, we're bypassing the jackhammer. Okay, so this is the totally clean sound of the CL120. So, you know, and we're in single coil mode on the Revelation. So, with using it like this, it sounds... I can hear it's killing the tone of the amp. In relation to this. Okay, so this is straight into the CL120. This is adding the Ibanez wah back in. It's killed the high end. It's a bit more kind of muddy than it was before. I don't know if you'll be able to hear that. Hopefully it'll kind of come across. And also, engaging the Ibanez wah now will also give me a horrific volume jump. And it sounds rubbish. It just sounds very uninspiring and just like really peeking out the camera as well, which is a good sign because it proves that it's the volume jump. Okay, so that's the clean channel. Okay, over the CL120. So now if I kick back over distortion, I've got the CL120 set up really clean and neutral. It'll still jump because I've got it set up really clean. But I don't know how well this is going to work with humbuckers, but let's find out. Okay, so now I've boosted the gain up on the CL120. So it's a bit more. I need more than that. Yeah, so I've boosted the gain up on the CL120 now to 5, and we're still straight into the Ibanez wah. We haven't got the jackhammer in. Now it should behave. Let me turn the volume down so it's not peaking. There we go. Okay, so now the Ibanez wah should behave. So I'm not getting any volume jump, and I've got that. You know, and I've got that kind of John-esque kind of sound. So, if you want to buy a true bypass model or one with volume, then that's cool. But you don't need to. You can, you know, the Ibanez, like I say, the Ibanez wants to see a distorted signal. It does not want to see a clean signal. So again, going back to the CL120, dirty channel, really clean. Jump. Knocking the gain up. So that was the gain at 2.5. Gain at 5, all of a sudden. You know, it's not jumping. It won't jump. So it's kind of up to you, really. I mean, like I say, you don't have to buy the true bypass model. Or the model with a volume. Actually, I've had people contact me with the true bypass model and the volume mod on the WH10, and they've just said nothing. People have been like, you know, saying, well, it doesn't sound. It kind of ruins the pedal because it no longer has the. It no longer has that wah thing, which is what we all want the WH10 to do. You know, that's the sound we love and that's the sound we want. So yeah, so bear that in mind when thinking about buying. I really don't know what to recommend. I mean, personally, I would recommend just get the stock one and just experimenting with what you've got to get it to behave. Because like I say, it does not want to see a clean signal in any way, shape or form. You need the overdrive, either from a pedal, the jackhammer actually reins it in better than the dirty channel on the CL120 and the dirty channel on the MG. It actually really... You know, it really controls it, the jackhammer does. And so, same with the Tone City Golden Plexi. So, if you're asking me, I would recommend just buying the stock V2 and just experimenting with your amp pedals to make it behave and say give it what it wants, which is that kind of broken up clean. You know, it's not clean. If the Ibanez was jumping, your sound is too clean. You know, and what might sound distorted to you might not actually be. Okay, that sounds weird. Okay, an example. This used to be my clean tone. And like a lot of people like that, for the longest time, I couldn't understand why the Ibanez WH and the DS2 did this. You know, it sounded horrific. Until I heard a recording back of me playing with a Tube Screamer on. And I thought the Tube Screamer added loads of gain. I thought when I put the Tube Screamer on, it was really distorted. I thought that was mega distorted. So I didn't use it. I used that because I thought that was, you know, clean. And it wasn't until I heard a recording of me using a Tube Screamer, I was like, that's the sound. But I always thought it was too distorted. I don't know if this is making sense. I'm a bit scared it isn't. But the point I'm trying to make is what may appear to be really distorted to you in a live situation or a recording situation isn't actually that distorted. It's actually very clean sounding. I think that made sense. I hope that if that doesn't make sense, I do apologise immensely. But like I say, this sounds clean. But it's not really clean. I mean, there's quite a lot of distortion there. Especially if I put a humbucker in. You know, there's quite a lot of gain coming from the jackhammer there. So like I say, I mean, coming back to the V2, a tangent again. Tangent boy is in effect. Anyway, but like I say, what I would recommend, like I say, is getting a V2 and just playing around with it and give it what it wants, which is an overdriven signal. And like I say, what appears to be massively distorted to you might not actually be massively distorted, if that makes any sense. It's a bit of a weird thing. It's a very, very weird thing. I'm going to have to do a video on this. This is going to take me hours to explain. But I would recommend getting a V2 just stock. But you have to give it what it wants. It's a very picky pedal. It's the same as the DS2. They're very picky. They're very, you know, they want what they want, and when they don't get it, they kick off. They're like a petulant child, if you will. But yeah, I mean, but like I say, I mean, that's what I would recommend. You don't have to go by anything I say. This is only my experience with the V2. But I haven't modded my V2, and it just works. You know what I mean? Because I'm giving it what it wants, which is that kind of distorted signal. So, like I say, mess around with pedals, mess around with your amp. Just find that sweet spot. And like I say, that sweet spot's hard to find. It takes a long time to find it. But you've got to persevere. You've got to have patience. And, you know, it might take a month. It might take a year. But you will find it eventually, one way or another. You know, it just takes a bit of tweaking and a bit of time. Okay, so I'm going to have to move on because I'm going to run out of time at this rate. I'm not going to get to all the questions I've got. So I hope that's answered your question. But like I say, I would just recommend buying a stock V2. Like, give it what it wants. Give it a semi-broken up clean tone. Okay, so moving on to question 4 now. Question 4 is, how do you play Murderers by John Frusciante? Are you using your fingers or a pick? And how do you learn songs that have never been performed live because you are never sure you're playing it right? Okay, so Murderers, I play it with my fingers. But I'm pretty sure John's playing it with a plectrum. Why not? It's a plectrum. You know, I think he's doing that with a plectrum, as the rhythm track sounds different. That bit is separate to the rhythm track, but I play both because I'm a greedy sod. Oh yeah, I can't get plectrums under the scratch plate. But I like to play both, so you get the rhythm and you get the lead thing. And I use my thumb for the bass, and I use my first finger for a little riff. I haven't played it in ages. That bit, I would say that bit is used his fingers. That bit is definitely his fingers. If that's even the way John recorded it, he might have recorded it separately. We don't know. But I don't know. It's just a feel thing. It comes down to personal preference. Like I said, I like to use my fingers because I like to be able to play the bass rhythm as well as the little cool little riff that we all love. But I don't think that's the way John recorded it, personally. It doesn't sound like that. It sounds like that, the little kind of main theme is separate to the rhythm track. I don't think he's playing both at the same time like I'm doing. I think they're individual. I think he's doing that as an individual thing to whatever's going, to whatever rhythm's going on underneath. So yeah, I tend to use my fingers, but you can use a plectrum. It's just whatever works for you. At the end of the day, like I always say, you need to find what works for you and do that. Because that's the way. That's the way you're gonna play it best. Is finding what works for you, what feels best, what works best for you. Okay, so that's how I do it. I use my fingers. How John did it, I don't know. It sounds like there's two guitars and the main theme is an overdub, or the rhythm's an overdub. I don't know which way around he recorded it, but yeah, I think he's using a combination of plectrum and his fingers myself, because he could have been doing this bit with a plectrum. Then put his plectrum out of the way and go to his fingers for that bit. We'll never know. We never know. But for me, I just use my fingers. I've seen other people use a plectrum and it sounds great. I've seen people hybrid pick it. All sorts. Again, like I say, it all comes down to what works for you. That's the most important thing at the end of this day. End of the day, it really is kind of like what works for you best. So. You also said, what was it again? Sorry. How do you learn songs that have never been performed live because you can never be sure you're playing it right? Just learn it. If you're not playing it right, it doesn't matter. As long as it sounds right, that's all that matters. I mean, trying to think of an example. Yeah, Basket Case by Green Day. I always used to play it like this. When I first learned to play guitar, that was the first song I ever learned all the way through, and that's how I used to play it, and that's the way I played it for years. Because when I first started playing, there wasn't YouTube or anything like that. There was no way, other than going to a Green Day concert and watching them, which I couldn't afford to do, I would know how to play Basket Case properly. It wasn't until many, 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 many years later I got given a VHS video of a friend of my dad's had taped an entire gig of Green Day playing live off MTV, back when MTV played music. It's called Music Television MTV, not Reality Star Television. Anyway, enough having to go at that. But yeah, and then it was then I realised that actually Billy Joe actually plays a lot of open chords. And that's when I relearned it, the way Billy Joe played it. But this still sounds right. If you play it Billy Joe's way, and then play it the way I learned it, it's the same chords. It's exactly the same. Yeah, it sounds different because you haven't got the big low E, but it's still the same chords. And the same thing happened with some Offspring songs like Self-Esteem and stuff like that I was learning. I didn't know how they played them live, so I was just going by what I could hear and this chord book that I have of Conspiracy of One by the Offspring. And it didn't matter because it sounded right. The chords sounded right. And J.K. Lee said a really, really cool thing about this, which I'm going to quote him for now. I can't quote him word for word because I can't remember exact words. But he said this, J.K. Lee said this. When he was learning to play guitar, all they had were records. There weren't CDs. There weren't CDs or tapes. You had to learn via record, and you'd put the needle on, and you would slow it down, and you would try and figure it out, and then you'd have to put the needle back, and then try and figure it out, and then put the needle back, and keep resetting it. And he said the really, really cool thing about that was everybody learned the song their own way. So when he went around to his friend's house to say, to show, like, for a jam session, and they was like, oh, I figured out Sunshine of Your Love by Cream. J.K. Lee would show how he figured it out, and his mate would go, oh, that's weird. So instead of, say, J.K. Lee learning like this, You know, like that. His mate would have gone. You know, he learned it in a different way, but it's totally valid either way. So it doesn't matter. As long as it sounds right and it's the right notes and it's in the right key and it's the right chords, it doesn't matter if you're playing it exact. You know, that can come later if you do see. But if it's a song you've never seen them play live, and they don't play live, then it's open to interpretation, really, of how they play it. Diary of a Madman by Randy Rhoads. Well, it's Randy Rhoads. You know, I've never seen him play that live, but that's how I figured it out. For all I know, he could have done it down here. You know, he could have done it in really weird chord patterns or shapes. I don't know. But this sounds right to me. You know, I could be totally wrong. That could be the totally wrong place to play it. You know, you could be playing it down here for all we know. But it doesn't matter because it sounds right. And it's the same with Smoke on the Water. Smoke on the Water, everyone thinks it's down. You know, and that's where I played it for years. It wasn't until buying a Deep Purple DVD I realised he's doing it there. It's a fatter sound. So if you've never seen the song played live, or it's not a song that the band, you know, plays live, then it's open to interpretation of how you figure it out. You know, there's no one, you know, as long as, like I say, it's the right chords, right riffs, right notes, it doesn't matter. As long as it's right, it doesn't matter. You know, just because you're not playing it exactly how they're playing it doesn't mean it's wrong. If that makes any sense. I don't know. I hope that makes sense. You know, because there's a lot of videos out there where, you know, it's played, you know, you get somebody saying, oh, it's played this way, and then you get somebody else saying it's played that way, and this, that, and the other. The only way to correct that is to go back to the source. But if the source isn't there, then anybody's opinion is valid of how it's played. You know, if there was never any footage of Ritchie Blackmore playing Smoke on the Water ever, you know, if there was literally no footage of him playing Smoke on the Water ever, you know, people were playing it like that. You know, like that. Or even power chords. What is it? What would it be? You know, whatever it would be in power chords. If somebody said that's the way he played it, then there's no reason to say that's wrong. You know, it's weird. But, like I say, it all comes down to your interpretation. Hideaway, Freddie King. Here's a good one. Freddie King, but Hideaway. He plays it like that. But Eric Clapton plays it like this. You know, you can hear it on the Blues Breakers record. It's a totally different tone because that's where he figured it out. But you wouldn't say that's wrong just because he's playing it there and not here. You know, like I say, even if you have seen them play it live and you know how they're playing it, if you don't want to do it that way, you don't have to do it that way. Songs are open to your own interpretation. You can do what you want with them as long as the song is still recognisable, because the song is more important than anything. You know, it really is. Like so as long as you're playing the song okay, then it doesn't matter how you're playing it. As long as it sounds like the song and people can sing along to it, then it doesn't matter. You know, it's totally fine. I've seen versions of Noel Gallagher playing Wonderwall, and he's capoed like on the 5th fret, and it sounds totally weird. It sounds totally different. You know, it really does. I mean, when you capo on the 5th fret and do Wonderwall, it's a bit loud. Sorry, hang on. In comparison to the 2nd fret, you know, that sounds right, but you know, it's open to interpretation. That's. I think I've waffled on enough about that. But anyway, I'm gonna have to move on. I'm gonna run out of time at this rate, so I do apologize. I hope that's answered your question. But yeah, you also asked, how do you play without tension in your right arm when sitting down? When you sat down playing guitar, first, if you're playing like first thing in the morning, your arm's dead tense, then it's going to be tense. You just have to work that out. It's just a warm up. You've got to do warm ups. You've got to stretch out, and you've got to warm up. So if you've got tension in your arms, you need to stretch. You just need to stretch. You need to warm up by either playing or this or the other. But I would recommend standing up. I can't stress this enough. Don't learn sat down. Learn to stand up and play, because you can move. You can feel this music. You can just get more out of the guitar if you stand up. Sitting down will stifle you. I promise you, it'll do you good to learn to stand up and play. It's so much better for you. Honestly, it really is. So I hope that's a question. I'm gonna move on to question 5 now. Can I get 3 questions in the time I've got left, which is about 15 minutes? Okay, so it might not even be that because the intro was ridiculously long. Okay, so question 5. What's a great alternative to a Strat style guitar for a John Frusciante / Hilla Slovak sound? Fender Jaguar, or Squier Jaguar, Jaguar. Seriously, it's basically, if somebody said to me, you can't play Stratocasters anymore, you are banned from Stratocasters, David Simpson. Use my full name, but that's a bit weird. Anyway, but yeah, if somebody said you're banned from using Strats forever, you have to go to another guitar, it would be a Jaguar, because it's the closest thing I've found to that sound. I mean, a Jag still sounds like a Jag. It doesn't sound like a Stratocaster, it doesn't sound like a Telecaster, it doesn't sound like a Jazzmaster. It sounds like a Jaguar. It's my own hair. Much in the same way a Les Paul sounds like a Les Paul, SG sounds like an SG. But I would recommend a Jag. I really would. And I can't afford to be Tangent Boy right now. And I want to be, but I can't be. But yeah, seriously, a Jaguar is a great alternative for a Strat. It really is. They're heavier, but they've got that 3/4 neck. They've got an amazing tremolo unit once you get the original bridge sorted out. And they're just immense. Absolutely immense guitars, Jaguars. I love them to bits. And I would recommend them highly for a John Frusciante, Hilla Slovak kind of funk kind of sound. Oh, if you don't want a Strat or you don't, or whatever, Jaguar. Okay, so I hope that's a question. Moving on to question 6 now. That was the quickest answer in the world. But like I say, I need to get the another 2 questions in. Question 6. Is it possible to get a similar tone to the Boss DS2 using a Zoom G2? Yes and no. No as in the fact of no pedal on this earth sounds like a DS2 other than a DS2. There is no other pedal in the world that has that. There is no other pedal in the world that has that sound. It's a very singy, pushed mid-range kind of tone, especially on mode 2. There is no other pedal, but you can get close. I mean, I don't remember where. I don't remember where the distortions are. Yeah, this is. So this is the DS2. And this is the Zoom. Not 100% the same by any stretch of imagination. I mean, the DS2 was brighter, had more of a singy kind of quality. The Zoom is a lot darker. What I will recommend is I've got a video demoing the Zoom G2 .1U, and in the description box I have all the settings for my patches, and there's a distortion one in there. I would recommend if you want that kind of sound, find that video. Actually, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll put the link below this question in the description box below, so it's easier to find. And find that video, and those settings should give you a jumping off point to get an approximation. It's never going to be 100%. It's not going to respond the same. It's not going to sound exactly the same. But you can get close with the Zoom G2. That sounds pretty close, but it's not the same. If you want the DS2 sound, you have to get the DS2. Much in the same way as if you want a fuzz face, you have to get an old fuzz face. If you want the tube screamer, you have to get a tube screamer. Or there are alternates to that now. There's far too many pedals. I can't keep up with it. But you know, much in the same way, like, you know, an Ibanez wah sounds like an Ibanez wah. If you get another wah pedal, it won't sound the same. So it is possible, but you're never going to nail it. It's never going to be 100%. It's always going to be about 75, 80% there. You know, that extra 20% is where the magic happens in the DS2, and you just can't simulate that, sadly. So, I hope that's answered your question. Like I say, the video link is in the description box below your question. So, you know, if you go into the description box on that video, the Zoom video, you'll see my distortion setting. Hopefully you can use that as a jumping off point to help you get the sound you want out of the G2. Because there's no difference between the G2 and the G2.1U. The only difference is the 1U's got the expression pedal. Okay, so final question of the day, everybody. I am running out of time. Question 7, can I get it in time? I hope I can. Question 7, is the reverb in the Zoom G2 good enough so you can avoid buying individual reverb pedals? Oh yes! Oh yes! I use the Zoom's built-in reverb all the time on my main pedal. This is the Zoom's inbuilt reverb. Absolutely washed out. And I say the ability with the Zoom, especially the 1U, is you can assign it to the expression pedal. So you can have nothing, or you can have loads, or you can have subtle. So yeah, I would recommend the Zoom G2's reverb, but the Hall reverb especially is spectacular. The spring reverb is a beast as well, but I think the Hall's the best. So yeah, you can easily get away with reverb in a Zoom G2. I use it all the time, religiously. On my main board, it's always on now. It's assigned to the expression pedal, and I play with it all the time. I love it. I love it to bits. It's big, fat, warm, and does exactly what I want it to do, which is just create that space, which is what you want from reverb. I don't use reverb on amps that much. I use it in here, but live I don't use the amps reverb. I just use the pedal. So yeah, you can get away with Zoom G2's reverb, no problem. You also said, do I like John Frusciante's abstract electronic music? Some of it, yes. Most of it, no. It doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't. I can't feel it, and if I can't feel it, I don't like. I can't get on with it. So songs like Poem and some of his crazy glitchy stuff, I can't get on with. Some of it I love, but some of it I just can't get on with. But John's electronic music is not knocking on the back door of Inside of Emptiness or Shadows Collide or The Empyrean. I would listen to them any day over PBX or Le Tour or Enclosure or anything like that. Just because I prefer that style of John to the electronic style. So you also asked, and I don't know how I'm not going to be tangential on this one, but you also asked, John Frusciante used to have a Dynacomp on his pedal board. Do you think compression is needed for riffs like Can't Stop on Under a Bridge? I don't know where you've read that or seen that. I've never known John to have a compressor pedal on his live gigging board. He used a compressor during Blood Sugar Sex Magic recordings, and also some of his solo recordings he used a compressor, but he's never had a compression pedal on his pedal board, ever, as far as I know. It's always been kind of like, fairly straightforward chorus distortion, wah, and delay, and obviously some kind of like modulation filters and stuff like that. But I've never known him to have actually a compression pedal on his pedal board. So my answer to that is no, it's not important. You don't need a compressor pedal to play Can't Stop and, Under a Bridge and that. Like, you just need, like I said earlier on, you need that amps compression. It comes from the amps and his pedals and his playing and the way he digs into the guitar more than a compressor pedal. He has used compressor pedals. I'm not saying he hasn't. Definitely not. But as for live, he's never had one on his pedal board. I've never known him to use a compressor pedal or a compressor pedal on his pedal board live ever. In all the pictures you see of his pedal board too, but you never see a compression pedal. So I'm not quite sure who's told you that or where you've seen that, because I've never known him to use it. I've only ever known him to use compression in recording. So yeah, no, it's not important. You don't need a compressor pedal. I would recommend, like I said earlier on, an overdrive is more important. You know, it really is, to get that kind of compression, to make the Ibanez WH10 and the DS2 behave, and also to give you that kind of like, you know, that bite and that grit to play those kind of riffs. You know, it's more important than a compressor pedal. It's not really the same sound. A compressor pedal will give you a totally different compression to a overdrive pedal, which is more of a natural kind of compression, if you will. I don't know. Anyway, but I hope that made sense. Anyway, but like I say, I'm not quite sure where you've heard that, but like I say, I've never known John to actually have a compression pedal on his board ever. So yeah. Anyway, so I made it with literally like maybe about 2 minutes to spare. So I hope not even that, everybody. So I'm gonna have to say goodbye. I really do apologise for rushing the last load of questions. I waffled on way too much at the beginning. Tangent Boy was definitely in effect, so I do apologise. But I still hope I answered all your questions okay today, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this Q&A. I will see you on Friday for another video. I have no idea what it's going to be. But I really do hope I've answered your questions okay. I really do. Especially, you know, I do have to rush some of them, and I do apologise for that immensely. But hopefully the answer's good enough. And if it's not, then, you know, you can beat me with a foam baton. Please don't, though. Yeah. Anyway, like I say, I do apologise for that. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this video, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this Q&A. I hope it's been informative. I hope it's something you can kind of like, you know, I always try to be informative. I'm always terrified these videos are rubbish and I'm giving bad advice. So hopefully it's good. Yes, I don't have any more to say. So thank you very much for watching, everybody. And I will see you again very soon on Friday. Have a great morning, afternoon, good evening. Goodbye now. G-Chords!